I mean, I started the channel about 2 months ago. Yeah, I guess going on 3 months now. It's about the beginning
Mark, it
of
doesn't
May,
count if you do it.
and then
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I started about like back at the beginning of May, and yeah, like I said, it was mainly just obviously the obvious culture war going on right now. It's mainly just in way of that. I mean, like I grew up as a kid in the '90s and stuff like that, and I'm a 32 right now. I got kids of my own now. I've lived my fun early life and shit like that, and it's kind of sad, like just seeing the younger people nowadays. Dude, you guys don't got shit going on, dude. Like, I mean, not you guys. I mean, the America doesn't have shit for you guys right now. Like you guys coming into the worst economy. Not saying you guys. I don't necessarily know you
No,
guys,
no. I
but
mean, like, I sit. So, how old are you?
32.
32. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think you know exactly the same thing that I think you have the same experience as me. Mark, maybe Mark is a couple years younger, so maybe not. Maybe
Literally
so.
two.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm about to say is like a very specific year that like only like I think people that are like 30 to like 33 right now would get. And that was 9/11 happened and everything was cool, and it sucked and everything,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so Mark obviously remember that, but I kind of like I remember the world before it a little bit and things really started to change. And then what happened was I got out of high school right as the bubble happened
Yeah.
and had to look for a job and get out of my house at 18. And then, like, immediately, all of the jobs were gone.
Right, right, man. So I mean, essentially, we grew up around the same time, but we have vastly different paths. I mean, like I say, that's one thing. I feel like I have a bit of a unique perspective. While most people were, thinking of their first homes and things like that, I was thinking about actually, I was 19 years old, thinking about my first time being in jail for 6 months, and then after that, I being put in jail at 19 for 6 months. I kind of just learned from the older inmates and
What'd you
stuff.
do?
And
What'd you do?
oh, drugs. That's the only thing I've ever been arrested for. Fucking drugs. Fucking drugs.
Oh, man.
Drugs have ruined my
Fucking
life.
drug war.
Fucking judicially. But ultimately, as you guys could tell, I mean, if you guys watched any of my YouTube videos, anything like that, I'm a somewhat pretty intellectual dude, considering I'm also a high school dropout. I mean, ultimately, I just
I think I think there's a difference between, intelligence and wisdom. And
right,
people think they correlate and they don't at
right,
all. There
right,
are plenty of the dumbest people in the world are the smartest people in the world. And I know
right,
that's obviously an oxymoron, but what I mean is that there is, a lot of people that are ideologically captured and possessed by certain ideologies and are really, really well educated.
right,
And they have tons of data and like esoteric and statistical knowledge, packed into their brain, but they don't have the wisdom to, let's say, see through bullshit. They
right.
don't have,
They
or
can't
they
see
don't have
the
street smarts, or they don't have, practical life experience outside of like the hallowed halls of academia. And so like you hear like the dumbest shit come out of their mouth. And
right,
you're like, how are you like a PhD in like, in this, and you've written all these books, and like you're just saying the dumbest shit ever. Like, how is that possible?
right,
Um, and I think that's something that I find interesting with libertarianism is I think I find a lot more wisdom in libertarians.
right. Because
Now, in the hardcore libertarians, I think it's the exact opposite. In the Ancap space and like the minarchist space, I find a lot of educated, edgy teens and a lot of super knowledgeable about economics people that just don't have that real world experience.
right. Well, like I said, I've been exploring your Discord and stuff like that, and the thing I see a lot in there is I see a lot of nihilism, man. Like I see ultimately, like I say, people that are on an objective path and things like that. People that are ultimately they have great ideas, things like that. Everyone in the fucking Discord is brilliant. Just they're nihilistically brilliant. Like I say, the whole ANCAP thing to me, it's ultimately I feel like it's almost betting on loss. It's setting yourself, or it's preparing for like I say, a total societal collapse. And ultimately, I mean, people always say, like revolution, things like that, but ultimately people don't really know what, revolution is. I mean, like, granted, of course, there's a lot of people, in foreign countries, but I mean, here in America, we got all these like young people talking about like, oh, revolution, destroy the system, fucking eat the rich, whatever fucking slogan is going around for the day. And it's people don't really understand like what those types of things really are. Like if you like examine history and stuff, they're notoriously bloody, right? Fucking family members killing family members, and then even after the revolution occurs, then it's a bloody power struggle, right?
So I want to challenge that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because I do see a correlation between nihilistic or fatalistic thinking and the recognition of all of the evils of the state, right? I think a lot of people do just kind of sleep happy, thinking their government's good and like, it's all in the best, and I'll just vote for the political party that matches my values. And like there's obviously going to be a correlation of nihilistic thinking when you're talking about the genocide in Yemen and everyone else doesn't even know about it. Right. But I want to challenge that a little bit, because I think the anarcho-individualist, the right-wing anarchist philosophy has always been one that has been against that sort of thinking. So I starting with like Benjamin Tucker, right? When Herr Moos, the German kind of like lefty anarchist, came in, these were the guys that were like, the Wildcats, throw fucking bombs at the police, stop that. And like Tucker was like, no. We need to educate people on a philosophy of liberty, and we need to slowly move this country in a better direction until we no longer need the state, because the people and the market and the economy and the philosophy and the culture is ready for it. And that, I think, is what most ANCAPs are actually about. But my Discord is not full of mostly ANCAPs.
I see
my
that.
Discord, because ANCAPs are very, very small percentage of the population.
Oh yeah.
My Discord is mostly full of paleo libertarians, people discovering libertarianism, and people that are waking up to the bullshit. Right? And I would say that that's not necessarily the ANCAP philosophy that is nihilistic. I think what it is we have a culture, especially of young men, that are seeing their communities hollowed out. They're seeing relationships destroyed by the state. They're seeing drug addiction and abuse everywhere. They're seeing economic opportunity decrease. They're seeing the corporate elite talk about fucking eat the bugs and destroy the farmlands, right? They're seeing all of these horrible things, and they're realizing the game is rigged.
Oh yeah.
And that these people are patting themselves on the back, and they're looking for like an understanding of a way forward that isn't just vote harder. And I think that's what we're actually trying to give them. I'm not trying to sell nihilism. I'm trying to sell anarcho-capitalism. And I think anarcho-capitalism is a philosophy of incremental change and hope for a better future.
Totally agree, man. And that's like I feel it is very necessary. Like I say, ultimately, we're pretty well aware that societies aren't going to collapse overnight. Things like that. It's ultimately a gradual slip, just like it's been a gradual slip since the McCarthy days into communism. And we're seeing it. Like I say, it's a gradual thing, and basically it started with the hippies preaching full on communism and stuff like that. And ultimately, like I say, they were really just a bunch of just utopian minded people that just thought, like, can't we all just get along, and can't we all just agree and things like that? Like, why do we have to fight and all this and that? Like, and
basically, it's engaged in the utopia. They're engaged in the fantasy. They're not engaged with the nature of reality.
Right. And that's
is your boy figured it out? Is he
I really don't know, man.
Because he doesn't have audio either. Like, what's he got going on, brother? Does he need a second? Like, because I haven't gotten any DMs from him or anything.
I could text him real quick.
All right. I mean, we can keep on. Like, I got no problem.
Yeah. But so like I say, I feel like
so what's your philosophy, right? Like, I want to know, like what are you preaching? What are your main goals? And what do you kind of like, what is your foundations for what you believe? So like, what are the foundations? Basically, what do you believe and why? And like, what do you hope to achieve?
Okay, so ultimately, I think he's figuring it out. But ultimately, like I say, I'm a father. I'm a father, and I'm a convicted felon. So really, I don't even have a vote. So ultimately, what I have is a voice, you know, and I got a pretty good way of explaining things to people. I have pretty good way of of showing the extreme of every side, right? Like I say, I like talking to everybody. I like talking to socialists just as much as I like being on the Discord and stuff and talking to different ANCAPs and especially philosophy. That's ultimately what I'd like to be considered as, a philosopher. I like to just ultimately I like to do the most good that I can in this world. I want to make people, like you say, re-educated. I feel like the Frankfurt School of Education is really kind of fucked our society with this whole ideology of basically like, can't we all just hold hands and everybody be friends and everybody just share with each other and stuff like that. But like I say, communism ultimately dismisses human nature, just like the opposite extreme ANCAP ultimately dismisses human nature, which everyone is always the first argument, always, oh, who's going to build the roads? And then again, the next argument is, oh, well, how are you going to stop being instantly invaded and stuff like that? And so, but like I say, ultimately they are both ideological views of utopia, right? Basically and like I say, they're both necessary. They're both necessary to have people preaching about them, because like we see with what's been going on with socialism and stuff like that, it's really
Hey, is your audio working, buddy?
Yeah.
All right, well, you figured it out. Hopefully you can help him out via texts. Sorry.
Yeah, but yeah, so ultimately, I feel like it's been a slippery slope down the rabbit hole into socialism, and basically, it's easy to sell socialism, right? It's selling, laziness and free stuff, right? You could sell that to fucking anybody, and really, like ANCAP is really selling, better yourself, be smarter, and fuck everybody else, right? And to an extent, right? Ultimately, we do all have to realize that we live in society, and so yeah, I feel
Well,
like
I don't think ANCAP. I don't think in any way, shape, or form ANCAP is fuck everybody else.
no, definitely not. It's but ultimately, in order to it's something that you can't have overnight. Like America could not turn into ANCAP overnight. Like ultimately, if we had if we had our way, if we legalized, like I did a video about it just the other day. If we legalized all drugs, the problem would inherently fix itself in the darkest of ways, right? Same thing with the food stamps and the social welfare system, and poverty and starvation would inherently fix itself in a basically ultimately, like I say, really really dark way. The extreme way is ultimately it'd be a sink or swim scenario. Either like basically if you move all social safety nets, it becomes a fight for your life. And
well,
like,
so here's what I would say, right? Politics is downstream of culture, and culture is downstream of philosophy.
mm-hmm.
And I think we see this even the communists, right? In the communist regimes, they thought that they could educate everyone on class consciousness and that would solve the problem.
Right.
The problem is that they needed, in order for communism to work, the critical mass of individuals has to be 100%.
Right.
Not one dissenting opinion, or that dissenting opinion must be removed. Whereas with like anarcho-capitalism, you don't need 100%. You just need a majority. Right. Because everyone else will be like, okay, this isn't really what I believe, but I'll respect private property. I'll run my business. I'll get a rights enforcement agency and I'll follow other people's rules. Right. But with communism, it's you're a slave because you don't get to own property, and you don't get to own the means of the production. No one owns the means of production. See, they always talk about the owners owning the means of production, but what communism really means is no one owns the means of production. Everything can be stolen from you always, including your food. And so, but I think that it's important to recognize that libertarianism, all of these require that we understand this. And so, like, if we institute anarchism tomorrow, right, the culture's not ready for it.
Right.
And people aren't philosophically ready for it. What people are still the majority of people still believe in social contract theory. They still believe in justified. They still believe that justified hierarchies can be established via democracy. Right. That like a majority can rule over a minority, and that like certain checks and balances and like rights in a document somehow make that okay. And so like we're just not ready for any of that. And that's kind of the name of the channel, right? The name of the channel is Fabian Liberty,
Right.
because we want to use a Fabian libertarian strategy, which is just, get rid of the government a little at a time, let the market open up, get rid of some of these regulations, let there be more and more free market. And eventually, I think what will happen is we'll be living in a society where we have a night watchman state, where the government really is only there to like negotiate treaties and has incredibly limited taxes and and a judicial system. And then eventually people will philosophically and culturally be like, hey, we're going to go live over here and we're going to have our own kind of thing.
Right. Basically, like what America was designed to be, right? It was supposed
Yeah.
to, it's the United States of America, not the United Federation of America, right? So
I mean, well, that all changed in 1861.
it's been a slippery slope, man. That's what I'm saying. I feel like Ancap is really just the pull to try and get back to the original America. The original idea of America, the original idea of a country of free men, basically. I feel like and I like I say I 100% wholeheartedly agree with all of it, but ultimately, like I say, I am a realist, and I do realize that it was a slippery slope to get to the point that we're at now, and it's going to be a long haul to get back, and ultimately, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to see it in my lifetime, but
Yeah.
you can't govern a better society. You can only create better people to create a better society. And that's why,
Yes.
the
100%.
educating our
Mark,
kids is the most important, really thing to a great nation. And I feel like we're
Mark,
letting our
Mark,
kids down.
Mark has a great quote that he likes to say all the time. I'll butcher it if I say it. So why don't you say it, Mark?
Society grows great when old men plant seeds for trees they know they'll never sit under.
Right. Fucking beautiful, man.
And that's how I feel, right? It's like, yeah, I don't expect to see anarchism in my lifetime.
Right.
What I expect is to instantiate those values into my children. And what I expect is to try and speak out there and instantiate some of those values in the culture and, push back against extremism. And I hope if enough of us fight, we can turn that dial. We can start steering that ship in the right direction, because we're way off course.
Oh, yes.
Right. We're way off course. And I know I'm never going to see the promised land, but I hope that maybe if we work hard enough, we can get ourselves a little less off course, or maybe even get ourselves on the right course.
Right.
And that would be a beautiful thing to die knowing I was a part of.
Right, exactly, and that's exactly the entire cause that started up. The YouTube channel is really ultimately me and my buddy, we cruise around, we work together, and so we listen to political radio all day long. I also should say that like I said, ultimately we took very different paths in life. Straight out of high school, I pursued the path of drugs and becoming a drug dealer. Like I said, I fell into the pop culture fucking endless pit of you're a snowflake, you're a superstar, fucking go be all you can be, everybody. Like fucking ultimately fucking Skid Row is filled with snowflakes, and eventually they all look like just a pile of snow. Society ultimately doesn't care about.
Is that a you quote?
That is me.
That's a good one. I like that one. That ultimately Skid Row is full of snowflakes, and eventually they all look like a pile of snow.
Right.
That's actually pretty good.
I want to be a philosopher, man, and fucking I have what you call
it's poetic. I don't know if it's philosophical, but
that's what a lot of really, if you look at the meaning to it, it's basically a kind of like an ego death. A lot of people, like, I've messed with psychedelics very, very much. I've experienced ego death quite often.
Oh yes. So, I could have fallen into that crowd very easily, right? Like I was super angry at my parents. Right. I hung out around nothing but druggies and and drug dealers. But I mean, honestly, what saved me was biological luck. That's literally the only thing that saved me. Is that I grew up with someone with a mother with BPD, a stepfather with narcissistic personality disorder. Half of my family has committed suicide from or overdosed, which I just consider to be another form of suicide, just a longer suicide that eventually catches up with you. And and it's because they're people from Appalachia that once the Oxycontin hit the streets, that community was done. What saved me was, I tried cocaine, and I think I did it 2 or 3 times, and like every time I've done it, I was like, oh yeah, I can't make a habit of this. We're gonna do this only when offered to me, right? I tried a painkiller one day, when I was like tired and like fucking had to go to work and I was sore, and I was like, oh, I feel like Superman. Not gonna do that. You know what I mean? And then I did some fucking psychedelics and was like, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to do more of these. Right. And so I did. Yeah, I tried them all, and I did them all a lot. I've done a lot of acid, done a lot of Molly, MDMA. I've done 2CB, 2CI. I've done, I've done DMT a couple times. Only blasted off once, and that was a crazy experience, right? But every time I've done a ton of shrooms, but I haven't done a lot lately since the army and stuff. I'm older. I just don't. Mm-hmm. Hey, it's just not my thing. Oh yeah. But maybe every couple of years, it's like something to go back to, just to reinsert. But I think that I just the biological luck of being able to recognize like, oh, that's dangerous. I could get addicted to that. I'm going to go ahead and not do that. If I had been someone with a more addictive personality, that was like, holy shit. Because cocaine, I think, was probably the worst out of everything I tried. I never did heroin. Well, technically I did heroin once, but that was on accident. And that was the worst experience ever. Because I got it from a guy. Someone asked me if I wanted a bump. And then immediately I was like, why is my fucking nose burn? What the fuck did you just give me? Like, what the fuck happened? And then I vomited a lot and got higher than I've ever been in my entire life. And then I watched The Land Before Time like 3 times in a row and giggled and drooled and was like, I'm never doing that ever. That was an accident though. But like, other than that, cocaine was, I think, the most dangerous one, because I took it and like 2 hours later, I was like, who's got more cocaine? Right. And then I had that thought and was like, that's a dangerous fucking drug. I need to stay the fuck away from that.
Yeah.
What about meth?
It's about the same as cocaine. It's just it lasts
longer.
It lasts
way
lot longer. Yeah, but
I've done meth, but
the psychedelic. I mean the basically psychoactive addiction is basically around the same thing. It's basically a mind over matter type thing. So I have the fortunate or unfortunate experience, depending on how you look at it, as every single drug I've tried to excess. Like to the point where I've been in rehabs and things like that. And ultimately, like I say, what really saved me and really pulled me out of everything, going to prisons, going to rehabs, being all I can, being the best fuck up that I can be, is ultimately having kids. I had my first kid when I was 28, and done. Never gonna touch a hard drug again. I smoked my weed, and that's it. Just instantly having kids. Just I immediately found what I was meant to do. And that's why, like I say, that's what really kind of started my channel and stuff like that. Is my kids are still little. And I don't want them to grow up in a society that just hates each other. I don't want a society that's just constantly lives in darkness, because everyone feels like they've been victimized by the system and things like that. And ultimately, they never once tried to learn the system. I have a saying, basically, all these people that hate capitalists, if they were taught how to be a capitalist in school, if they were taught about the stock market, things like that in school, they probably wouldn't hate capitalists so much. Like
oh god, yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing people do not realize is just how much you change as a person the moment you're it's for a man anyways. For a woman, it's obviously very different, but for a man, it's that moment you have that fucking that, oh god, what is that fluid? I can't remember the name of the fluid that's covering your baby out of the womb. That like gunky white. Yeah. No, it's like gunky white shit. That's like all over your baby, and like they used to clean the baby, but they don't anymore because it's actually super healthy for their skin. Yeah. And we realized you're not supposed to clean it off. The moment they hand you that gunky, disgusting little fucking thing, and you look at that child and you hold that child and you put that child up to you, your entire world changes. I don't give a fuck who you are.
Right. It's like instantly you get to be a kid again. Like,
I mean, some people, they revert and they're pieces of shit.
Right. Some people start acting like a child again, but ultimately, like I feel like, dude, I'm 32 years old and I get to go to fucking Chuck E. Cheese and go down the slides and fucking climb up the jungle right. and shit again, dude. Like, that's dope. If I did that by myself without kids, I'd be arrested. I'd be called a weirdo and kicked out of these places, dude. Like, it's pretty cool, man.
Amniotic
Like,
fluid. Amniotic fluid. That's what I was looking for. I was like, I know it's not embryonic. It's amniotic fluid.
yeah,
Yeah. But
yeah.
like you get that disgusting. And the thing is I think that is part of the problem with our culture is we stopped having children.
Right. We started viewing children as a bad thing. We started viewing children, like having children as a really holding you back. But like I say, if you look at my story, and of course I understand that my story is quite unique. Like I say, there's not too many people that dive into 10 years of drug addiction and fucking in and out of prison and this and that, and then instantly come back out and just like I said,
I don't know that your story is the only reason your story is unique is because of our current criminal justice system.
Right.
Like without our current criminal justice system, the idea that people fall into really bad shit as men and then they turn 26 and start to realize that they're not doing shit right, and then they end up having a kid. That's not a crazy story. Right. It's only unique because of the way that our criminal justice system forces people into a repeat pattern of behavior. You become a felon. It becomes so difficult to get a job. You know what I mean? Like you end up owing all this money. You have all of this restitution and all this shit you have to pay, which I mean, most systems will require restitution, but you end up being locked into a fucking jail with fucking insane criminals and thugs and violent people. And you have to learn to become a better criminal in order to survive.
Right. And actually, just like I say, through reading some of the, like I say in the Discord, a lot of the Ancap discussions and stuff like that, a lot of the Ancap political ideology is it's prison politics, you guys. It's pure prison politics. It's basically
Can you explain?
Well, it's prison politics minus the race aspect. All right, so basically, so ultimately, when we look at certain different sort of societies that have very minimal government interference and things like that, that basically self-govern and things like that, they're ultimately generally surrounded by a larger more protective state nation and things like that. Say like reservations even, or I believe you're talking about a country in Mexico. I believe that in
Chiron.
Yeah, like I said,
Chiron. Chiron's an interesting case. The indigenismo. Anarcho-mutualist, anarcho-environmentalist with like a very old, and the indigenismo is what really makes Chiron special because they returned to a pre-colonial form of like heterarchical mutualist government that's like based off of their like kind of their local religion.
Are they more or less homogenous there though?
Oh yeah. Like if I mean, like they have people that come in that they've accepted into their community,
of course,
right?
Yeah,
but wolves. Like, right, but like the fact of the matter is that their government structure is religiously based off of their ancestors and their ancestral homeland.
Right.
So it's kind of difficult to fully assimilate into that culture without marrying into the culture.
Right.
Like you can't really just like move there and then they'll be like, yeah, you're one of us now. Yeah, it's like you're going to be like an outsider and you're really going to have to like prove your worth to them over and over again and then eventually marry into the society and at least not like disrespect their religion and their faith and their culture before they really like bring you in.
Sounds almost like Amish.
Yeah, the Amish are another great example.
Right.
Casimir, he's a Russian Jew anarchist, Ancap, as were so many of the individualists, Russian Jews. Isn't that fucking weird that so many of the individualists were Russian or German Jews?
Right.
But regardless,
almost like something happened there.
Right? Yeah, it's almost like they experienced the horrors of fucking Nazism and communism, and we're like, fuck this. But he talks about the Amish all the time and how they like. And like the Amish and even the Mennonites and stuff like that.
Right. So back to, bringing it back to
prison.
Sorry. Right. No, you're good. That's what I like to do with my shows. I like going off on tangents and, ramble. Yeah. That's what it's all about, man. Just kind of let it flow. But back to prison, society. So ultimately, like I say, most of these societies are all surrounded by a larger protective outside state. Or governing entity like the United States, with the Amish and the Indian reservations, or the Mexican government with the people. I forget the name again, but And ultimately, like I say, that's pretty similar to a prison. Like ultimately, it is an animal farm in there. It's fucking insane. Like I said, I was on a pretty high level
Mm.
yard too, so I've literally witnessed people be brutally murdered by other people for stealing something like a Kool-Aid packet. Like I ultimately saw 3 people get murdered the entire time I was there in over 2 years, and it was it's like I say, it's a third world country, but it's ultimately it's a small country. The inmates govern themselves. The guards are simply there to make sure that one person doesn't kill the entire population or some shit. One person doesn't go nuts.
Right.
Basically, just to somewhat keep the peace. But ultimately, it's a inside. It's a you get your free governed meal, so that's similar to capitalism. You get your small portion state issue, but ultimately, if you want to make it in there, you have to be an Ancap. Basically, you have to come up with a hustle. And mine was tattooing. Like I said, I dive deep into everything that I get interested in, so I become a tattoo artist. I played that guitar right there. I fucking I got really deep into occultism, but I don't like to really talk about it too much because it really does kind of fuck with my head a bit. I've fucking and just recently, of course, since COVID and things like that, I've discovered politics. So ultimately, up until about 2018, the only thing I knew was I'm not a liberal. And now,
Right.
just like I say, I once I discover something, I get obsessed with it, and I literally discover it to the
Well,
very end.
I think the thing that's important to recognize about prison, right, is that you're also dealing with a young male, high risk, low IQ population.
Right.
So obviously the
Not,
systems
not
and how they
necessarily.
play.
Not necessarily. Like contrary to popular belief,
Well,
there's a lot of fucking geniuses
compared to
up
the
in there.
general. Oh no, for sure,
There's a
for
lot of
sure,
criminal geniuses up in there. The people
for
that
sure.
run the population, they literally will spend. They'll put up $1,000 on a foot race. That they're
Right, but the outliers don't
right.
compare to the general population, right?
Right.
The general prison population is younger, obviously male, obviously more violent, obviously more high risk behavior, and obviously lower IQ.
Right.
All of those things are true, but that doesn't mean everyone is that compared to the general population. That's just the pattern. So I mean, like, you're going to see a different kind of, and obviously a totally different kind of instantiation of those
Right.
things.
So, right. So to that, there's 2 types of people in prison. There's the civilians, and then there's the political people. Much like we see out here, right? We have the people, and then we have our permanent fucking political class that are just will not give up their fucking positions, right? Fucking fuck it, no fucking term limits, things like that. Those type of people, the people that want to rule forever. Those there's the
Mm-hmm.
two. It's the same with prison. You could either go in there and be a citizen, or you can go in there and be all you can be and try to get involved in politics, and you'll probably never make it out of there. Either you'll end up catching another case and getting life, or you know you won't make it out of there. And like I said,
Yeah, I've heard unless you're in like a maximum security that like, and I've spoken to quite a few people that have been in prison, not jail,
mhm,
and they've kind of all told me the same thing, which is unless like if you're only there for like 6 year, 8 year, or 2 year stint,
right,
best thing you can do as a white dude usually, right?
it's anybody really. Right.
Join the Christians or join the people that do like yoga and shit,
Yes.
and then do your best to stay the fuck out of everybody's way.
Yep.
And if
Because
somebody fucks with you, only fuck with them back in the immediacy of the situation. Don't ever try to get back.
yes, that is the absolute must. Do not. If someone calls you out, do not back down. You instantly have to fight. If the word bitch gets thrown out there and you don't swing, you're getting fucked up by your people because you're making your people look like a bitch now. And
Yeah.
yeah. So yes, that's a very very
But most of them said if you're with like the yoga people or the Christians, like they
yeah.
usually just don't fuck
Yep.
with you.
They'll leave you alone if they see that you're ultimately trying to really just better yourself. Then they're proud of you, and they'll encourage you. They'll wake you up and make sure like, hey man, fucking church, make sure you get your wash your face and stuff like that. They encourage it. I was not political in there. I was simply an observer. I sat on my
Mm.
bunk and I just watched. Like I said, I was there for 2 years. I wasn't there for all the time I could try and get. I wasn't trying to fucking have the best time there. I was just trying to experience it. I guess I had to be there ultimately, but I was really just trying to experience it. And that's like I say, I didn't have help from the outside. I didn't have family or anybody sending me in money, so I ultimately had to come up with a hustle, and that's why I said I did tattoos, and I did get in trouble for it, quite a few times, and so that's how I ended up making it up to higher level yards. It's not like I was, doing anything particularly bad in there. I did get in trouble for, being a free market capitalist with hooch in there. I used to brew alcohol under my bunk, and I did get, in trouble for that a couple times. But ultimately, I was just trying to lay low and just, do my time and get out of there, go home, and but ultimately, like I say, I've always been an observer most of my life. I've never once given a shit about politics. I've just really observed the culture shifts that happen among them.
So I want to go all the way back to the original question, which is like, what is it that you like? What is it politically like that you're currently at? Like, because you say I'm a libertarian, right? And I'm with you on that. I'm trying to have a better. It's such a big tent, right?
Right. So
I'm trying to dig in a little bit on like what it is that you believe, and maybe talk about that a little bit, or have a little back and forth.
All right, so I'm a right-leaning libertarian, which I'm essentially what you would call a Trumpster to some extent. But ultimately, I just put out another video the other day talking about how Trump's a fucking authoritarian dictator, but ultimately he's necessary at this point in time because as much as you hate politics, you have to really understand they are necessary evil to an extent. Ultimately, it would be great to get rid of all of them. So. But I do understand that society is very, very vastly far to the left at this point, and it's almost it's becoming FUBAR. It's we really need basically an authoritarian fucking right leaning motherfucker to at least kind of pull the nation back to the right. To at least kind of center us up a little bit more, So I have this theory that basically, a lot of people view politics as being, linear. It's just, you're on the left, you're on the right. You could hop over here, you could hop over there and stuff like that. But I view it more as like a wheel, like think of it as a circle. And basically at the top is 1776, liberty, basically. The very bottom is totalitarian rule, basically. And then we have
switch it and you just have the political compass.
Yeah, pretty much. But like mine is it's more of a, like I say, a weighing thing. Basically, it's the population power in politics, basically. And like I say, so you could dwell on either side in America. I mean, you could be a a right winger and still understand that, well, maybe it is okay to take care of our older people when they get old and shit, especially if they've paid into Social Security and things like that their whole life. I mean, a lot of people can kind of understand that, especially because they realize that I'm going to get old too. I'm not going to be able to fucking work my ass out for the rest of my life. But so. And that's why I say it's become a necessary. So you could really kind of dwell on either side in America. So there's a left, there's a right.
Casimir is here, and he said, "Did you read Julius Caesar theory from Curtis Yarvin, which is Mencius Moldbug?"
I have not, but I'm gonna write that down, and I'll definitely check it out immediately after here.
I mean, if you consider yourself a right wing thinker, Mencius Moldbug or Curtis Yarvin, Mencius Moldbug was his like pen name essentially. Mm-hmm. He's the guy to listen to. I mean, he's not an anarchist in any shape or fashion.
Right. Well, as for my favorite philosopher, I definitely have to go with Nietzsche. I mean, his characters is take it or leave it, but ultimately his philosophies they really resonate with me. I quote him quite often in the.
Yeah, I think ultimately I think Nietzsche is just wrong, right? Like I'm avidly against his philosophy, but
which
I definitely. Well, I think, I agree with his assertion of slave morality and master morality, right? I do think that is, well, at the very least, slave morality. I think master morality, like the dichotomy I take issue with a little bit because there are other forms of morality, obviously. But I do think that was definitely right. And I think he discovered a lot in Thus Spake Zarathustra.
Yep.
But I think ultimately he fell flat of understanding, in my opinion.
Do you know who Zarathustra was? Zarathustra was an actual person in history. Zarathustra was a philosopher that started the Zoroastrian religion, and like I said, I'm an occultist, so I've studied religions throughout time, basically. And Zarathustra, who was translated by the
first major.
Basically the
first major monotheist.
Yes, basically the creator of monotheism, and
he's also basically the creator of like half of Jewish philosophy. Let's be honest.
Right.
Like once you understand Zoroastrianism, you understand that a lot of Judaism is derived from Zoroastrianism. But
Really,
To
a
go
lot of religions
further.
have taken from it, and ultimately Zoroastrian took from all the ancient, polytheistic religions, and basically just summed them up into a more simplified form. Basically, polytheism was basically, the gods represented individual virtues, and it basically.
Well, so what you're talking about is something in religious studies that they call evolutionary monotheism,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Which is the tendency of religions to move themselves from the basic path or the evolution of religion appears to be as such, and it's a pattern that repeats itself over and over again, which is religions start off with physical things that exist in the universe and your ancestors.
Right.
Those are the two things you end up worshiping, right? So,
Right.
You worship the trees, you worship the farmland, you worship, like if you're in a village that depends upon the sea, you worship the wrathful god of the sea, and try and appease that god's wrath, right? And then you worship your ancestors.
Right.
And then eventually your environment takes precedence over your ancestors, and so then there becomes but they marry into the same concept.
Right.
And so what you get with is you eventually get a whole set of gods that represent your family and represent virtues, but also represent physical places in the world. Right. So you get a god of the seas, and the god of the seas is a wrathful god. It's a god of anger. And you can see when a young boy is getting angry that the god is speaking through him, and that the god is attempting to make him into a better man. And just like the sailor on the seas, can he overcome the winds? Will he be tossed aside in his own vengeful spirit, or will he learn to tame the seas and understand that his wrath is both a tool and a necessary evil in his life, but also a gift from a god, and that he shouldn't abuse that power lest he be swept up by the storm, right? And so it begins to embody those virtues from the natural environment. Then you get a pantheon, right? Because just like the world and just like your society grows and gains a hierarchical structure. You start to get a chiefdom. You start to have a guy that's in charge of everything. And then he starts to have like a kind of a cabinet of trusted people. And then your religion starts to model the real world that you live in, which is, well, if there's all these gods, how are these gods checked in? How are they reined in? There becomes a king of the gods. Right? And then eventually you get to Egyptian philosophy where you get, Amun-Ra, right? Where it's like all gods are really just Ra.
Right.
Ra, but Ra,
derivatives
Ra,
of the sun.
Right, but he splits himself to speak to the people. He splits himself to embody this particular domain or this particular space, right? And then eventually you get one of two things. You get revelationism or you get evolutionary monotheism.
Right.
Because the culture is now ready for monotheism. And so what happens is you get evolutionary monotheism, which is Zoroastrianism, which is we eventually meld our religion into the point where, there's one God, right? And there may be some characteristics that God shows in other places, but it evolves. And then, or you have something like Judaism, which is revolutionary monotheism, which is someone comes from on high and declares this is the religion. We have had a revelation, and this is the faith, and this is the one and only true God, right?
Right.
Zoroastrianism was evolutionary monotheism. What's really crazy, though, is that Judaism has a hint of evolutionary monotheism. And most people don't know that the ancient Israelites used to worship, and there's a reason I just brought up the storm, was to wrap this all up. They used to worship the storm god, El. And El had a wife. And this is where Elohim comes from. It actually comes from the god of the seas, because they had multiple gods, and one of their gods won, and that became the god. So that's why that's part of why you have Adonai and Elohim and the Tetragrammaton, right? And the difficulty of pronouncing the Tetragrammaton. So you have Adonai, you know what I mean? Like, oh, that's the Lord, that's God. That's just kind of the word God. And then you have Elohim, and they believe that the word God or Elohim may have been influenced by El, the storm god. And once that clicks in and you know that, you're like, oh, the great flood story and like Jonah and the whale and all these other things start to make a lot more sense once you realize that like the stories that got passed down are stories from the storm god,
Right.
the god of the seas, if you will, the Poseidon. I always thought that was kind of interesting.
Dude, all religion's interesting, man. And that's really what an occultist really is. It's basically an occultist has the imagination of a child, and just the endless wonder of a child, basically just always
I think we
looking
got to
for-
get past that, which is why I disagree
Right.
with Nietzsche.
Right. And like we are ultimately past that. If you look at Aleister Crowley, he had a theory about eons of
Oh
matter.
God.
Right. Definitely, if you're not into any type of occultism, do not start with Crowley. Right. Looking into occultism.
Mark, why are you not chirping in?
Looking into
I only speak when I
occultism?
have something to add, man.
Right. Looking into occultism and starting with Aleister Crowley is like trying to introduce someone to punk rock with G.G. Allen. It's basically just the.
Is that the guy that
extreme-
like smeared himself and shit and like attacked
Oh, yeah.
people randomly
Yes.
in fucking shows and shit?
Right,
Okay,
right.
yeah.
Basically, you're gonna.
I never really listened to his music because
because
I was never a big punk rock fan. Like I respect the culture and I knew a lot of punk rockers, but it was always just like, eh.
See, I always
my
liked
vibe.
the punk rock culture because the anti-establishment culture,
Yeah, I liked the culture. I just wasn't a
Yeah.
big fan of the music. I liked metal.
Yeah, I liked the energy that it gave me. I liked if I can I just want to go fucking hit somebody. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah, metal gave me that. Metal gave me that energy. All right, you know what I mean? Like I just was never a punk rocker. I couldn't.
Isn't it
I
weird
couldn't do it.
how different music can put you in a different vibe? If I can. Music can literally take you out of a vibe and put you in a completely different vibe. It's like it's energy, right? It's literally vibing. As the kids say these days. But Nietzsche has another quote of Nietzsche. Nietzsche said, "Without music, life is pointless." And
I mean, yeah, but there is something of like there is something of a mystical experience that our brain searches for
right.
in that occurs in dissonance and harmony,
Right.
right? Because dissonance and harmony and a rhythm, right? I think if we take these three principal elements of music, as far as I see it, and we map it over the Tao Ching, right?
Mhm.
What I would say is that rhythm is the way. It is the Tao Ching. It is the path between these things. And the melody and rhythm, the melody is order. And dissonance that resolves into the melody is the elements of chaos that we want in our order.
Right.
And so I think that we at a primal level we understand music as when it's really good music and we're really into it is because the rhythm tells us what the path through all of this is. It's the Tao Ching. It is the way. It's the dot 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 dot. No matter what happens, there's a beat, there's a rhythm, there's a rhythm guitar, there's a bass line, there's a drum section, there's a pattern of the universe that tells us to keep marching forward at the same pace.
Right.
And the melody allows us to play, and it's structured and it's ordered, right? And then to have that truly mystical experience, you need that dissonance that resolves, right? There's no more famous example, I think, of dissonance, in my opinion, that like really struck a chord, pardon the pun, with society than the Devil's Triad being used
Yes.
by in like songs like War Pigs
Yep.
and Black Sabbath's music, that dun 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 dun,
If you
and like that
analyze,
grating perfect third that then resolves into the melody.
if you analyze fucking the early Black Sabbath, really all Black Sabbath, just really all Ozzy's lyrics and stuff like that, it obviously heavy into the occult, right? And he's probably translated it into a way that people can understand better than anybody. Like, I still get chills when like from his song, Over the Mountain with Randy Rhoads, when he says, I heard them tell me that the land of dreams was now. I told them I had ridden shooting stars and said I'd show them how. Like that's some freaking deep shit, man. Like, and that's basically what an occultist is. So if you look into occults like the Golden Dawn, which was around from, I believe, 1899 to the 1950s or 60s, I believe, somewhere around there. And they believed in things called the astral plane and astral light, right? So the astral plane, if you really sum it up, it's your imagination, right? That's where God exists. That's where God has always existed. And the astral light is basically if someone that's able to use their imagination to literally see everything and basically literally manipulate the vibrations of space and time in order to display the message that they want, or to create the magic that they want. And basically
I'm an atheist. You want to talk occult shit, you got to talk to Mark, but for whatever reason, he's shutting up.
well, the first step in becoming an occultist is understanding that God does not exist and never has. That's the very, very first step in discovering occultism. The very next step is you have to wonder, okay, well, if this is true, then why has there been religion pretty much since the dawn of time, since man's first memory, right?
What I would point to in my explanation and much of my
Mass
study
psychosis.
and research. No. There's a wonderful book. I tell everybody that I know to read it all of the time, by Robert Bellah. Okay, it's Harvard Press. It's called "The Evolution of Religion from the Paleolithic to the Axial Age," I think is the title.
You've never told me about this book.
I tell you about this book all the time. Robert Bellah. So Robert, just like it sounds, Bellah. Human Evolution. Sorry, Human Evolution from the Paleolithic to the Axial Age. It was supposed to be a 2-part book. But he died before finishing his work on the second part. The first one took him far more. And it is the only real deep, it's a work of pure genius in my approximation, where he marries an academia, where he basically tells academic, like, he tells the religious right that are like religious fundamentalists, go fuck yourself, you're stupid, you're wrong.
Right.
And then he tells all of the atheists that are like, oh, religion is just this meaningless shit made up to control people. Go fuck yourself. You're stupid. You're wrong. And then he explains, like, he starts with like the Big Bang, and he starts with like scientific explanations. And then he starts by describing kind of 4 modalities of human consciousness, which is like universal, unitive experience, symbolic, narrative, and then like theoretical, analytical. And he talks about the evolution of psychology through those things and maps all of that out. And he talks about like what makes human consciousness special in its evolution, in the way that it created itself. And he talks about like the disposition to dominate, the disposition to resent domination, maternal instincts and paternal instincts. And that no other species, even before we had like a fully developed consciousness that we have today, no other species has all 4 of these things. Right. No other species on Earth wants to dominate, doesn't like being dominated. Yep. The females have a desire to care for the children, and the males have a desire to care for the children together. And he believes that these 4 things are actually what allowed us to develop a consciousness. So he doesn't go into like mushroom and the cross and like psychedelic experiences, which I think is actually a pretty stoned ape theory is actually a pretty smart idea. It just sounds.
I'm actually writing a book based on it. I'm writing a book based on it starts out with stoned ape theory, and that's basically what I feel is the dawn of consciousness. Basically, when we as you know from doing psychedelics, one of the most common side effects is extreme empathy, right? You for some reason you feel like the other person next to you's story, like their pain is your pain, for whatever reason, right? And I feel like basically that's where man kind of developed that thing. But if you go back into Crowley's theory, so he believed that there's been 3 major turnings of ages that he called eons of man, and it basically started out with the first eon, which is basically the eon of Isis, which was the eon of the mother. And basically that's when we worship the earth and polytheism and basically all the known objective universe, right? And then he believed that the next age was the age of Osiris, and that's when like I say, monotheism basically came around, and we began to worship the universe and everything around us.
I have a tattooed from the Emerald Tablet of Hoth on Thoth from on me. Yeah,
nice. Right.
Well, it was something that always struck me was this. Now I kind of look at it a little bit sillily, but at the time I was really trying to understand Jung, and he referenced Emerald Tablet of Thoth, as above, so below, as within, so without, to perpetrate the miracle of one, and like me engaging with shadow material. And I got that that tattooed on me. Now I look at it, I'm like, I don't know that I really believe this shit, but it's a cool tattoo.
But believe everything, man. Like that's the first thing. Like I say, the first step of occultism is you have to realize that God does not exist and never has. And then ultimately, there's generally a path that people tend to go down. Generally, you're going to realize that God doesn't exist and never has, and you're going to go be an objectivist. You're going to go out and try and find your own path. And basically, if you don't have a path set out for you, like if you don't have a college fund, things like that, you're gonna end, like I say, you're gonna end up on Skid Row, some shit like that, thinking you're a fucking superstar and you're about to go to an audition next week, and then you're gonna start to question, well, if God exists, then why is there so much sorrow in the world? Why would he allow me to live to be this way? And then you're gonna say, well, if God exists, fuck him.
Isn't that interesting that that's usually the greatest argument against God?
Right. Like
is human suffering, needless human suffering.
Like,
it's the one thing that like I never understood, like that always to me always just seemed like so weird to me how Christians like cope and contend with this idea that like pray to God because he really gives a fuck about your promotion but doesn't give a fuck about antibiotic resistant tuberculosis in South America, right? Like God really wants you to have that better job, Phil, but he doesn't give a fuck about all those kids in third world countries that are like dying from fucking TB and can't get medicine. Like it just always just seems so silly to me. I don't like, I think but I discovered that at like fucking 12, like it's not like an interesting that's not like an interesting thing. I totally understand why people come back to religion. And obviously it always comes back to that leap of faith. I think my biggest thing is I won't take a leap of faith anywhere. Period. Which leads me to be a functionalist, right? Which is, I don't fucking know. I'm not taking a leap of faith anywhere, but all the evidence in front of my eyes pretty much leads to like objectivist philosophy, to be honest. Like, I mean, like that's probably like, I don't give a fuck about the cult of Rand or like half the shit she believed, but the metaphysics, like if I had to guess which one was right, probably that. I guess, but I don't fucking know, that matches the reality that I see in the world. So that's how I'm going to act. Because that's what I see, like,
So then we'll get on to Crowley's third eon, which he believes that we're just entering now, and that is the eon of Horus, or the eon of the child god. And basically that's that's where my theory starts to kick in, and basically like say I feel like it's the same. We started out as an infancy. The human spirit was in its infancy, right? And that's why we clung to the nurturer. We clung to the mother just like a child clings to his mother, that to a mother's breast for nourishment, right? And so that's why we started to worship the earth and all that we could see around us in polytheism, right? And then the father is the universe, right? So that we begin to as you see with the child, once the child begins to be independent of the mother, they want to hang out with the dad, especially young men. They want to sit there and pretend shave in the mirror with their dad and stuff like that. They want to learn from their dad, and that's why I feel like fathers are so important in society. And so of course but ultimately dads are dads. If you look at the Jordan Peterson idea of parenting, a mother wants to nurture and always keep the baby super close until they're 35. A dad just kind of wants to just put him down, see what he does, and basically so the universe,
I mean, dad wants to engage in oh god, what is it called?
Fun stuff.
No, it's a certain type of play that animals do and fathers do that females typically don't do. And it's one of the biggest reasons why you can't get rid of fathers. I can't remember the psychological term for it off the top of my head for whatever. But it's, like play wrestling, play fighting, like letting them kind of win a little bit, letting them explore their bodies, letting them explore the physical space. Right. This is, it's like, it's roughhousing, but there's a technical term for it. But rough and tumble play, that's what it is. Rough and tumble play is the psychological term. Rough and tumble play is one of the biggest things that if a child doesn't get enough rough and tumble play, that it can fuck them up for the rest of their life.
Right.
And it's something that females tend to do much, much less of and tend to shy away from. And it is theoretically, psychologists believe that it might be one of the many, obviously there's a ton of factors, but one of the many factors that leads to guys that, boys especially, that are raised by single mothers, and they're let's say underdeveloped masculinity and all of the toxic issues that they have in crime and drug problems and violence and things like that, is not having that father figure, but also even at a very young age, not having that rough and tumble play, that rough housing, that punch buggy, no punch back as they grow up. The exploration of their physical boundaries and understanding empathy through physical connection and pain.
Yeah. Like I say, if I could,
But doing so in a loving and caring environment, right? Because the dad's never trying to hurt you,
right.
but he does want to hurt you. And that's the thing. He just wants to hurt you a little bit.
Right.
He wants to pinch you. He wants to like punch you on the arm and you're like, ow, dad, that was too much, right? And it's kind of
a pile of pillows, yeah.
Right. And like you understand your body, you understand what your body can do, you connect with your body in a certain way, and you have empathy through physical interaction, right. And it builds mirror neurons, which eventually increases empathy and that connection with the bodies and playing. It allows you to connect with another person and build mirror neurons. And mirror neurons, while they're engaged in physical play, are also the same portion of your brain that activates when you see someone get kicked in the nuts and you go, ooh, right?
Right.
Those are mirror neurons in your brain. That comes from rough and tumble play. It comes from wrestling with your kid, right? That's how you gain physical empathy for other bodies. And without that, that's how you become a bully. That's how you become someone that lashes out. That's how you become someone that has difficulty understanding social situations and understanding when someone's mad. Or it's how you end up with fucking other mental issues, and in the culture war that might, be fixed with certain drugs that change many things about your body.
Right. Yeah. Fucking that whole fucking thing. So, yeah. There's two fucking genders, people. There's boys and there's girls, and it's for a reason, Like fucking, you can't have a baby with this, but ultimately, everything in the universe exists within a binary. There's like down to atoms. There's positive and there's negatives, right? And that's okay. It's being able to if you're a guy with some feminine traits and stuff like that, if you're a guy that's sensitive and stuff like that, if you're a guy that's in touch with your emotions, you're probably gonna get more fucking pussy than you could imagine, dude. But
unless you're doing touch,
right. But then again, we also
can I say some? I'm gonna say some home. I'm like, it seems like a wild night. We're tangenting, and like, you know what? I'm loving this. I'm loving this conversation. We don't. Every night doesn't have to be us discussing the finer details of argumentation ethics, boys. Some nights we get to do a Joe Rogan night. It seems like a Joe Rogan night. So I'm gonna say something. I have a hypothesis.
Yeah.
Totally unfounded. Okay. Totally unfounded. This is not a scientific thing, and I'm not backing this up with any research. Okay. And it's going to sound homophobic to a certain degree. But just hear me out, boys. First and foremost, I think there's a gay gene. Now, why in the world would a gay gene exist? Right? It doesn't make sense, because you would think a gay gene is going to be detrimental to the population growth of a culture or a society. And so if a gay gene exists and it's detrimental because it makes you homosexual, right? Then you're going to have declining birth rates. Eventually, people that pass on the gay gene, their genes won't promulgate, and it's a gene that should go away. So why has it been with us?
Because it's more of an ideology. And that's the whole groomer aspect and shit going on.
I mean, like, I think sexuality is more fluid than the LGBT community wants to admit, right? until it benefits them. Then all of a sudden gender is fluid, and it's because these people are fucking Hegelian Marxists and they think you can fucking have contradictions and it's perfectly fine.
Right. And
I just disagree. So I want to discover truth. So what's the truth, right? Yeah, I think nature and nurture, that's always going to be a fucking thing. I think it's an element of both. So, but why would that element be there at all with that danger unless it had some benefits? And I think it does have benefits, because here's what I think. I think when your society maintains keeping people in the closet, right? And I think when your society is a culture that doesn't have the same environmental factors that help express those homosexual genes, such as societies that like stamp down on degeneracy, right?
Yeah.
like authoritarian right-wing cultures,
Right.
for example,
Right.
right? That occurs. And so you have the gay gene, but it's not necessarily expressed. And you might like have a little bit of it, but you're not like out there like, oh my God, women are gross, I only like men. I think that there's also elements to the way that this gene may be expressed. I don't think it's like one gene. I think it's it's multiple variables. So like when you have dominant recessive, there's no gay gene, bro. I mean, say that, but we've all seen that fucking 2 or 3 year old and we're like, that kid's growing up gay. And you just kind of know it. And then they're like 11 and then they're like, I think I might be gay. And they're like, dog, we were waiting on you. We all knew it. Right. It's okay. Like, you know what I mean? So like you can say that, but like anecdotal experience aside, like I've kind of seen that shit. Waiting room.
Why?
Yeah. Sorry. This isn't an open panel. We decided to schedule a talk with some libertarian podcasters tonight. We do open panels from time to time, though.
And then the one guy just dipped.
Yeah, he tried. He tried to get to work, but you know it is what it is. But I think the evolutionary advantage is that when you have the recessive, far more common trait. So it's the same thing with like sickle cell anemia, right? Whereas like if you have recessive sickle cell anemia, you're resistant to malaria. But if you get sickle cell anemia gene from both your parents, you have dominant sickle cell, it's actually like really damaging to your body, right? Mm-hmm. But the reason sickle cell exists is because it's a fight back against malaria. In a similar fashion, I think people that have low expressions of like overproduce, it's not about femininity, it's about understanding the being of other men, understanding how other men tick, understanding and picking up on certain details that come from attraction. And what I think this does is this allows the culture to establish a hierarchy easier. And what I mean by that is this lets you find, and I'm going to go into red pill terminology. I don't believe in these red pill terms. I'm just doing it because everybody knows what these terms are. Mm-hmm. So like understand that I'm not like actually promulgating red pill, MGTOW philosophy, right? But presumably there's the alpha, right? And then there's like, the betas, and then there's like, the Charlies and the deltas and the omegas, right? Mm-hmm. And like the beta is like the smart guy that's a partner that like, helps the alpha. He's maybe not as charismatic. He's maybe not the born leader. He's maybe not the most masculine, but he's the strategist. He's the guy that like gets it. He's the partner in crime, right? Right. I think it's an advantage for that guy to be a little gay. I think it's advantage for that guy, that partner in crime, that number 2 guy, that guy that is the cabinet to the true leader, to find, discover, and support those men that will rise to the top. Right. That's a hypothesis, a total hypothesis I have. I totally made it up. If I smoked weed, this would be one of my redeemable ideas by Mark. It's one of those things that I just think of, and I don't know if I'm right. I'm probably wrong, but it's just an idea that I have that I'm like, I think that might be an answer.
I mean, essentially, we see that in animal societies and things like that, like in prides of lions and stuff like that. Like once other males are born, I mean, they're lucky if they even get to live. Just they might challenge the alpha male, and they can't have that. I mean, we see it in literally fucking ape cultures, monkeys, things like that. They all seem to have these hierarchical societies and things like that, and it's basically all boils down to an alpha, and basically it's like I said, it's the alpha that basically keeps the family in line, basically continues the
right,
keeps everything okay, basically, I guess, for the most part. And essentially, I don't know, in some of them they're more kind of just dictators, like say lions, they'll have the women just go out and hunt and then just bring me back some food,
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Taftage has a much more plausible explanation, and I read it from her, and I was like, fuck, Taftage might be right, which is that homosexuality tends to be more common with later successive sons. So like the firstborn is a lot less likely to be homosexual than like the second, third, and fourthborn, and that it might just be an evolutionary adaptation to like keep men from competing for women in the society, because women all want to look for like the best men, and that like the older, more more established men don't have to have as much like literal competition from other men, and that like sexuality just tends to be fluid in the female domain. And I was like, fuck, she's probably right and I'm probably wrong, but I like mine idea sounds cooler. But hers sounds like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense actually now that I think about it.
So I guess mine is like I said, everything in the universe exists in a binary. There's positive and there's negative. There's male, there's female, right? There's two genders. Just like if we look back to religion, right? There's a God and there's a devil, right? There's a up and a down. There's a good place and a bad place. Everything exists within a positive and a negative in a binary, right? And humans we have free will. Our minds are free. That's why I say in America, being free people, if you could dwell on either side, you could agree with anybody you really want. You could have your own opinion. Essentially, you don't have to follow your people. I fucking hate identity politics. Shit, just because I'm a brown dude doesn't mean that I have to bro with the fucking brown people. Be an independent thinker and shit. And so I feel like that's what makes basically people. Either you could have sort of male or female traits, and or I mean essentially you're either male or female, but you can have either one of those traits. You could kind of dwell on either or. And I think with what's going on now with the is it's being glorified toward the other side, and it's being
like I would almost always refer to the big five because we discovered the big five personality trait, right? Through data. We didn't discover them by trying to map data onto a theory, right?
Yeah.
So like the whole like INTJ and shit like that, like that's bullshit, right? A lot of the work psychology things, most of those are bullshit. Big five also completely discredited at this point. Okay. Well, we discovered it from the data, right? Like, I don't know who discredited the big five, especially considering that work continued by moral psychologists were able to use big five plus aversion. You like actually became a better predictor of political elections and outcomes than did pollsters, right? So I mean, like, if it's so inaccurate, how is it more accurate than politics? Right?
It's fucking nuts.
You know what I'm saying? Like news, like the pollsters that their entire job is to predict elections weren't as accurate as just personality metrics and aversion studies. Nate Silver has been wrong for a decade. Okay. I love when people just go, that's debunked. And I'm like, okay, how? And then they go, because they're wrong.
Right. Like I always say,
I love you, Lush Future. Welcome, but fucking, I don't know what you're talking about, man. I haven't seen anything that's massively debunked it. I've only seen tons of evidence supporting it. I'm sure there are people out there that think it's I tried to actually talk. Dog, this is not a Discord server. I mean, it's technically in a Discord server, but this isn't a bunch of people hanging out in Discord. I'm a streamer, fairly successful one, on the cusp of doing much better. I'm like the third largest non-left wing streamer in Twitch, Paul. Like I schedule things. But anyways, so the big five, if you look at it from a big five perspective, right, you're going to have men that are low in conscientiousness, high in openness, and high in neuroticism, right? That's essentially a female temperament.
Yeah.
Like that's a like like if ever there was a female brain, right? Which there isn't, but assuming there was, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? So like a certain percentage of the population, no matter what you do, is going to have a female temperament in the way that they approach things, in the way that they enjoy aesthetics, in the way that they view the world. I mean, obviously there's going to be biological factors, whether or not there's a gay gene, but also, hormonal differences in the way that affects the brain, etc. But there's going to be people with a female temperament. Yeah. That doesn't make them, you know what I mean? So
we call them SJWs.
I don't know. I mean, the left does
liberal.
Left. I mean, openness, personality trait openness does correlate very heavily with left wing. And now it didn't used to be, but now neuroticism does as well.
I ultimately just feel like anything that is really, I guess, negative. whether it's a certain type of virtue, like I say, like nihilism, ultimately,
Mhm.
like people know that if you just think that everything sucks all the time, like, yeah, everything's gonna suck. That's why I just feel like people, just need a lot more positive outlooks on life, yeah, especially in these times, because there's people at work that wish to divide us and shit like that, for whatever fucking reasons. I don't, my theory on that is, they are aware of the fact that, the fact in nature that generally chaos or disorder tend to crave order. So
Yeah.
the more divided you become, the more dependent you are. you know
I don't know. The more divided you are, the more dependent you are. So
I mean, as a nation, like,
no, I'm trying to think about it, right? Because if you're divided by tyrannical order, do you crave more order, or do you crave chaos?
well, we seem to
And
see
what
it
is
right
what
now
is it?
with Trump. Like I say, Trump is ultimately an authoritarian, but we are seeing, he's
Yeah, but
got a cult of
he's
personality thing going on right now with the
I think
Fox.
it's the opposite. I think he was chaos. I think he was chaos.
I believe he was chaos that fucked up the order that
No, 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 no.
the
It's
political
he was a
power we're trying to fucking maintain, which is basically a steady decline toward ultimately us continuously voting away our freedoms.
yeah. No, I think he was an element of chaos as we developed tyrannical order. And the tyrannical order I speak of is the amalgamation of the state, the Leviathan slipping its tendrils and finally fully and completely capturing media and the ideology of, we'll just say slave morality, Marxist philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Of like, taking over academia, taking over Hollywood, taking over the media, taking over a lot of these cultural institutions, and then invading in a kind of dual power Leninist kind of philosophy, the deep state, or the fourth branch of government, right?
Yep.
So that the bureaucracy is full of all of this shit. There's PowerPoint presentations of, gender binary shit to our troops and all this weird shit, right? And I
Yep.
think what happened is people saw that tide coming, and it was tyrannical order. You're silenced online. You can't say certain things at the workplace anymore. You can't express your opinions. And I think Donald Trump, and obviously the guy that wrote Dilbert said this, but like I've parallel thinking because I had kind of the same idea. The moment he became an icon wasn't because he was a reality TV star. It wasn't because he was a billionaire. Those things helped, right? It wasn't because he had this beautiful capacity to say outlandish things. And well, that's part of it, what I'm getting into, and garner more media attention. I think it was that moment where the female host of the Fox News town hall or debate, sorry, between all the Republican candidates, she tries to take him to task for all of the shit that he said about women. And any other politician would have crumbled and apologized, right?
Right.
And then he said, I said those things about Rosie O'Donnell, and the crowd erupted with laughter.
Right.
And it was a like a moment where they're like, finally somebody just fucking broke the fucking cycle. Somebody wasn't a pussy. Somebody just fucking like laughed it off because it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
And I think he was this outsider. Nobody really knew what he was going to do. He was wild. He said crazy shit. Like, I think it was the element of chaos that let him rise. Obviously there was competence that existed, at least to some degree. I think in a lot of ways he was an incompetent president. More so than any president I have lived under. He was the most incompetent president. But he wasn't part of their club.
Right.
He was the element of chaos, I think.
Right. He was
So that's
the
what
outsider, basically.
I think under tyrannical order, people are craving chaos.
To an extent, I mean, ultimately, but I mean, we know that. I mean, chaos generally is always gonna, like, say a revolutionary type, chaos, right? It's ultimately going to end up craving chaos. You cut the head off of the snake, and one is gonna instantly grow back. So I mean, ultimately, chaos. Like I say, when you take away a leader, there's going to be a power struggle immediately, like we're seeing in the like Sri Lanka and fucking all over that fucking place right now, and didn't fucking Italy just recently dissolve parliament or something like that, some fucking shit, but
yeah. Or no, it was and then fucking Israel can't get it together either. Like
right.
they can't agree on their government.
Shit. Fingers crossed for fucking Trudeau next, man. But either way,
are you Canadian?
No, I just
Oh
yeah.
I'm hoping. I hope I'm not wrong, but I am hoping Pierre Pelevra can take him out.
Yeah, shit.
I think Pierre Pelevra is. He says the right things about economics, right? That's the best I can say about him, is that he says the right things about economics. Whether or not that's good enough and whether or not he's honest, I don't fucking know. But he can't be. It's hard to be worse than fucking Trudeau and say the right things about economics at the same time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So
just the thing he said, dude. Like, just I don't know, the left wing. It seems like a passive aggressive type force. Like when he just comes out like, oh no, like you guys never had the right to defend yourselves. Like, what makes you think
it's not about? Yeah. It's not about passive aggressive. It's about subversion.
Yeah.
Right. It's about not challenging things head on, but instead subverting via the dialectic, finding your weak point and then maximizing that weak point, right, and ignoring the rest of all of the data and ignoring the nature of reality to create inconsistencies that don't even exist. Do univariate analyses of historical analysis or standpoint epistemology, and then restructure the power to fix the wrongs that they made up themselves. And it's a brilliant fucking tactic, and it's worked since Marx.
And who is this again?
Who is what?
Shit. I think you said it was fucking Pierre something that you were talking about.
Pierre Pelevra. He's Pollivre. Is that it?
IEVRE. Yeah.
IEVRE. Yeah. It's French Canadian. He has a lot of videos on he's been taking him to task for COVID, taking him to task for inflation and spending, taking him to task for the regulations in the housing market and how they're how the housing market bubble is an issue created by government. From an economic standpoint, very, very solid. From a social point, he seems like maybe a neocon, little L libertarian. I don't know. It's hard to nail him down. He seems like a paleo-lib socially, with some right-wing authoritarian sprinkled in there from time to time.
All right,
but from an economic standpoint, the motherfucker's a libertarian. He gets it. He's a Chicagoan, economically, Milton Friedman type philosophy on Thomas Sowell type philosophy in economics, 100%. Not an Austrian, but good luck electing an Austrian.
Right.
Trudeau boy reminds me of that Nazi from Saving Private Ryan that kills the soldier with a knife while whispering for him to resist and die easy. God damn.
Right, dude.
Oh, so that's an apt analogy, but Jesus.
That's a pretty good one, man. It's fucking spot on, man. But
took a dark turn real quick.
But all right, I gotta start wrapping up here soon. I could hear my kids starting to wake up, so.
Oh yeah, that lovely fucking thing where the kids go to sleep for 4 hours at a time.
Right. Good times. I got one that's she's 1.5, and then I got a son that he's just turned 6 months, so he's teething right now. So it's rough times.
Oh god, teething is not fun.
All right. But hell yeah, man, fucking it's definitely a good conversation, man. We definitely gotta
So make sure if you're in the Twitch chat before you go, make sure you shout out your channel. Apparently these guys are new. It's 2 of them. The other guy couldn't get his tech to work. That's okay. Delve a little bit into the occult, interesting backstory, talk about some libertarian stuff. We'll make a Ancap eventually, boys. It's okay.
Yeah. Right. But Right, so yeah, like you said, I just started a channel on YouTube with my buddy, and we try to put out content every day as much as we can. Like I said, we're pretty even new to just tech in general, so we're still learning how to edit videos and do all this type of screen recording.
Yeah, it's a learning curve.
Right. So like I said, we've been doing it for about like 2.5, 3 months now, and it's coming along pretty good. But definitely it's a like and subscribe and all that good bullshit that they tell you to do. But it's the Liberty Bowl. We're on YouTube, Rumble. I upload to BitChute every now and then, but not so often. 'Cause it's their search engines really aren't that great. It's really hard to get noticed on there. I haven't like I said, I'm new to all this online streaming stuff like that. I'm a completely new face on the internet. So
Yeah, well, welcome.
right.
It's an uphill battle, but hopefully you do well.
Oh yeah. I definitely appreciate talking to you guys and all that stuff, and you guys will definitely be able to talk to me in the Discord, all that stuff. Talk some shit. We'll argue some philosophy, some politics.
Get your own goddamn Discord and start managing a Twitter and putting out some tweets from time to time.
Right. I do have a Twitter. I just use my personal Twitter, and just I just got on Twitter like 2 fucking months ago, so I just made it for the channel. I don't really
There you go.
I don't social media myself. I don't, like I said, I'm new to the internet. Like I don't even broadcast and really know.
Cypher God says, "Ha ha ha! Welcome to hell." You wanted to say
Right.
something, Mark?
No.
Oh, you did like and then yeah. All right. Well, pleasure having you. We're gonna keep the show going. We'll definitely check you out, and we'll have a chat from time to time. You're welcome to stop by whenever you want. If we're doing something, we might not. It just depends on what we're doing, but
Right on, man.
stick around. Don't
yeah.
be a stranger.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it, man. If you guys like I say, if you guys like smoking weed and fucking talking politics and conspiracies and just random ass shit, man, fucking definitely check out my show. You guys are definitely gonna like it. I'm a bit rough around the edges a lot of the times, but it's all in good fun, man. And like I say,
It takes a long time to get comfortable too.
oh yeah,
Like those first couple months with us, dude, you should I'm so fucking glad that shit's not on YouTube anymore. There's no record of that. None of you people don't fucking repost that shit. Those fucking libertarian podcasts we did a 2-hour fucking podcast on libertary city planning, talking about aquaponics, hydroponics, and aeroponics, and how cities might have to be built and shit. And it was the most boring, dry, unengaged, unentertaining shit ever.
right.
But you got to learn.
Right. Yeah, we're definitely messing with our format. We're gonna try doing like when we do our conversations with each other, we're gonna try doing like this 2 topics, and then we're gonna try and just do some random shit, like talk about fucking aliens or whatever, and then we're just gonna try and we're just toying with the format, seeing what works. He's my buddy's starting to edit his own videos and stuff like that. He has full access to the channel, so he's gonna be uploading his own opinions and little shorts and stuff like that, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, we're just seeing what works right now, seeing what people respond to. I'm actually doing another segment I just started doing called Rethinking Idioms, where I just literally exactly what it sounds like. I just take commonly used phrases and just look at them from every possible angle. And just kind of.
That reminds me of a bit from the guy, I can't remember his name, but he used to do Cash Cab, and he has a whole bit about a couple of idioms.
Yeah,
And
in the hand is a really crapping, or a penny saved is a really crappy savings pile.
Right.
no, he does one where he's talking about like a bird in the hand is worth more than 2 in the bush, or like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And he's like, killing 2 birds with what? And he like breaks it down.
Right.
And then he's like, have your cake and eat it too. He's like, why? That's the whole reason I have cake. Like, why would I have cake and not eat? He's like, who does that? And he just goes, diners have cake and you can't eat it. Right. He just talks about like that spinning cake thing in a diner. He's
Right.
like, that's about diners.
Right.
It's just
How long is that
it's a
shit
pretty
been
funny
there?
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I'll talk to you later, man. Go give your son a finger to chew on.
Right. All right, man. You guys have a good one.
You
Take
too,
All
care.
right, brother.